Hola, minasan! Welcome back for another round of Mechwarrior research. Battletech research. Yes. We're switching it up a bit because here's the thing. Okay. I am enjoying covering the mechs, but keep in mind that I'm still new and fresh to Mechwarrior Battletech. I don't know everything about it. And covering the mechs as if I am well versed in the franchise is doing a disservice to all of you, my dear viewers. And it would be in the best interest that that I try and cover some of the houses and get some of this knowledge in there. Not only that, but I'm trying to see if I could find like maybe history, a history in terms of its game design, at the franchise, and so on. To cover that a little bit, so that way I could know a bit more. Just the way that I did with Warhammer. You know what I mean? Even though I dove into the orcs, I still did a little bit here and there to learn more about Warhammer, both as a franchise and as a world. even though I did cover the world part, I only covered House Kurita, and there's still other houses to go with. You know what I'm saying? And I did the Shiro because it followed through on it. And although the Atlas was very general, a general mech, which makes sense, I do need to, keep diving more and more into Mechwarrior and BattleTech to learn the lore and the world build of every, of the whole thing. And just focusing entirely on mechs is not going to be very helpful in the research because many mechs do belong to specific houses. And if I don't know the houses and the world proper, like I said, I'm doing a disservice to you guys. So, today, we're covering the Lyran Commonwealth back at Pancreas No Work channel. That's right, Pancreas No Work channel. Very good channel. They're a very good channel. He's a good channel. And we're going to see what he's got to say about the Lyran Commonwealth. The House Steiner. Gonna bring out the Scott Steiner. Gonna be grabbing me by the top buckle and drop me down and body slam me and such. That's what's gonna happen here. So we're gonna see what this is all about. Make sure to check Pancreas No Work channel. Links are in the description. So this is a call to action. Comment, like, subscribe, follow, hit the notification bell, and let us begin the research.
You like robots?
Yes.
You like big robots?
Oh, yes.
You like big robots that have people inside of them controlling them? The number of Warlord Titans GW is sold is higher than 0, so at least a few of you like big robots more than you like paying rent. And you know who else loves big robots? Battletech. It's a setting about warfare revolving around big robots. Naturally, they're gonna love them. No, I'm not gonna apologize about calling them robots instead of mechs. Suck a fat one. Even the smallest of scout mechs is still a mech, so if you tried to square up against one, you'd be an almost literal footnote in history. Battle mechs are titans of warfare, eliminating all in their path short of another, bigger battle mech. But one faction in this universe takes it to a whole new level. One faction looked at the battle mech and said, bigger. And when they were given bigger ones, they simply said, bigger, one more time. And then, when they finally got the biggest battle mech they could reliably produce, they said more. Really, I could probably end the video
kaiju?
right there, couldn't I? That's all you need to know about these guys. But that's no fun, and I don't get mid-roll ads if I do that. So sit down by your solid gold fireplace, laugh at the idea of people having less than 9 zeros in their bank account, and listen as I tell you about the Lyran Commonwealth, where subtlety goes to die. The Lyran Commonwealth came about in 2341, when 3 different mercantile alliances came together to form a really big one. So big, in fact, that the only other power that can rival them in sheer size is the Federated Suns, even to this day. A more professional channel might tell you a bit about these 3 differing groups and how they came to merge. I won't be doing that because I don't care, and neither should you. Their governmental structure was similar to the ancient Athenians, with 9 rulers known as Archons running the place. Let me tell you, as someone who wrote an entire thesis about the subject to graduate college, ancient Athens sucked. Seriously, go read about their actual history beyond learning about how they created democracy, and then the teacher rapidly moves on with the lesson before anyone can ask what sort of things they did with the democracy. And sure enough, the system of 9 Archons also kinda sucked. So the leader of one of the three original states, one Robert Marsden, staged a coup and took control in 2375. Now he's in charge and there's only one Archon. Then in 2407, the Draconis...
Hold on. That was a little fast there. Let's go back. Sorry. Robert...
Now he's in charge and there's only one. Marsden staged a coup and took control and... So the leader of one of the three original states, one Robert Marsden...
Robert Marsden. Okay. That went a little too fast there.
Staged a coup and took control in 2375. Now he's in charge and there's only one Archon. Then in 2407, the Draconis Combine invaded for no doubt wonderfully valid reasons that don't revolve around honor and war crimes. His brother Alistair died, and then his wife Catherine Steiner took control. The Steiner dynasty had begun, and they would rule the Commonwealth for pretty much the rest of the setting. Things were a bit rough for the Lyrans for about 50 years, but then in 2443, the Lyrans pulled off the heist to end all heists. Despite battlemechs being the mainstay of the setting, until now they weren't really a thing, and even then only for the power known as the Terran hegemony. The Lyrans took one look at the toy that the Terrans had and went, "Me want now." And sure enough, despite it being a rather turbulent affair to get a hold of him, House Steiner became the second house after House Cameron, and the first of the 5 still standing great houses to finally get their hands on a battle mech. Long after, everyone else got their own, but the Lyrans were there first, and during the Age of War, this gave them a hell of a head start.
Yeah.
Then the Star League happened, and the Lyrans joined in on that sort of prosperity humanity had at that point. Under the superpower of a united humanity, all was good-ish for a few hundred years, and then some asshole named Stefan Amaris decided things should no longer be good. One civil war and kick-ass last stand later, there was no more Star League or Terran hegemony. The Lyrans came out of it pretty well, given that they devoured a good portion of the RimWorld's Republic's planets, as well as a decent bit of the Terran hegemony's burnt-out husks of worlds. They even have the honor of initiating the first major strike of the First Secession War, and the slightly less honorable distinction of setting the precedent of everything being completely destroyed when the Lyran general in charge resorted to nukes. Even in the early...
What? They got nukes in this? Yo. Okay, that's a little extreme. Mechs with nukes. That's very extreme. The Lyran Commonwealth is... Wow. No, seriously, that's crazy. That's crazy. So they went through... So they've been coming out on top from the very start and just elevated their power even more by loading up their mechs with nukes. Yo, this family is crazy. And they're the ones that did the first strike, that made the first strike in the First Secession War. Dang, they're not playing. I'm very curious as to what type of mechs they pilot now.
Days of the setting, bigger is always better was a common theme for these bastards. And if the first Succession War was when people started dying en masse, the second Secession War is when technology started doing the same. The Lyrans had actually managed to make some solid gains during the First War, granted at the cost of most of their warships and quite a few of their people. But during the second conflict, not many planets changed the color on their flag. What did happen was that the Lyrans, alongside everyone else, blasted their technological base back to the Industrial Revolution, which you might notice is a big problem for a spacefaring civilization. The Lyrans at this time were led by an Archon who was rather bloodthirsty, which in this case meant that he was focused on gladiatorial matches and murdering his political rivals rather than the war that was going on. This led to the Lyrans kind of getting the shit kicked out of them for a while, but as I'll explain later, this doesn't matter much to them. They got rid of him anyway, so he stopped being a problem sooner or later. I'm jumping ahead about 20 years now to the Third Secession War, where things were a lot more small scale, but also the war was 200 years long, from 2866 to 3025, so it kinda balances out. I'm doing this because I'm realizing that I'm several pages of script into this video, and I haven't actually talked about what the Lyran Commonwealth or its House Steiner dynasty is like.
That's
true.
true.
If you want to know what the Lyrans at large were up to for about 200 years, minor border disputes. That's the Third Secession War summarized, and that's pretty much all it was. Now, to sum up the Lyran Commonwealth, it is obscenely wealthy. If you recall from a couple of minutes ago, I mentioned that the Lyran Commonwealth came when 3 different mercantile alliances merged together. And even after 600-odd years, this spirit of mercantilism never went away. Making money is built into the very heart and soul of the Lyran Commonwealth, which I'm going to return to, but it's something good to keep in mind going forward. Their head of state is, of course, the Archon, who is the current member of House Steiner, lucky enough to be the child or appointed heir of the last Archon.
With using the Infinity Gauntlet, I see, while grabbing a lightning bolt. That's pretty That's pretty Thanos of them. And I see that they got the Game of Simon, a very giant, large size version of the Game of Simon over there in front of the whole thing. Seriously, this is one crazy setup they got going. Like, they have a throne with two giant megs guarding the throne. Are you serious? This is epic. No, I mean it. I mean it. I'm not, I'm not joking around. This is actually a pretty wild setup. Like, I never would have thought of something like this for a throne room in my stories. To spot up two giant mechs, two giant robots next to a throne, like the piloted robots. Jeez, yo, this family is not playing around. This is pretty good. This is pretty good. You want to really create a nice presence of characters. This is how you show it. This is how you show it in to the fan base. Just have them just have a throne room with two giant robots, piloted robots, with the big size game of Simon in the middle.
He or she has absolute power over the Lyran Commonwealth, except not really, but also yes, they very much do. If you piss them off, they're going to drown your planets in assault mechs until they decide you've had enough. They can grant noble titles just as easily as they can take them away. They're the head of the armed forces, so if the Archon says you're dying on a backwater planet, then you're dying on a backwater planet. And generally, you don't want to make them angry at you. Below them is the Commonwealth Council. They meet up every spring on the capital world of the Commonwealth, Tharkad, to discuss nobling things and how to go forward in governing the empire the Lyrans have built for themselves. It's made up of 8 members, though later on the setting was bumped up to 11, and only one member from any noble house can be on the council at any one moment, Steiner included. Of course, given that it's a safe assumption that a Steiner is always the Archon, you can probably guess which councilman is the most.
Looks like the Jedi Council room.
Their power waxes and wanes with the years, but at least in theory, they're the second rung up from the top on the Lyran political ladder. They're an interesting mix of being a middleman and an advisory cabinet for the ruling Archon.
Okay.
The entity they're middlemaning for is the Estates General of the Commonwealth. Anything the Estates General passes has to go through the Council first before the Archon can approve it, but funnily enough for a setting whose main governments are feudal space empires, it is the Estates General who holds a large amount of the Lyran Commonwealth's power. More than the Archon? No. But they did once more or less veto the ruling Archon into resigning, showing that while they may have been formed as little more than yes-men, they've turned into an actual ruling body. In fact, they very much do have the power to depose the current Archon, though this can naturally raise all sorts of political hell. They also have to confirm the ruling Archon, so if nothing else, they can tell the current Steiner trying to get in charge to piss off until a better one shows up. Not that they do very frequently because of the politics involved, but they can. No one with a higher title than Baron can join the Estates General, and each planet amongst the Lyrans elects a representative to be their guy on the inside for 6 years at a time. No term limits, so no doubt the same issues of old fucks who have been in power since before the television was invented plagues them, much like it does our current politics, but for a feudal empire modeled after the ancient Greeks, that's some good stuff. Their personal property is placed into a blind trust for the duration of their term, and they even have their accommodations paid for by the Archon himself. True, the Archon could probably buy out a good chunk of the inner sphere if he really wanted to, but it's still a nice gesture and shows that the Commonwealth isn't just a one-man band. They're in charge of the boring shit that nonetheless gives the Lyran Commonwealth its immense power, like tax reforms and the budget, and by all accounts, at least on these matters, they're pretty good at their jobs. While the Archon can ultimately ignore anything they do if they so please, the Lyrans as merchants know the power of delegations and letting
okay. So they Game of Thrones this whole thing.
Wherever you are on the Lyran social ladder, money is the end-all be-all of things. Here's a nice quote
money
from
money talks and bullshit walks, huh?
One need to know very little to get by in the Lyran Commonwealth. Who to talk to, who not to talk to, and who to persuade with the appropriate number of sea-bills. Now, granted, that man was serving 5 years in prison for bribery, but if anything, that just proves his point. You gotta bribe the right guy. And if you can do that, or just have enough money in general, you're the guy in charge. As a rule of thumb, the number of medals on an officer's chest is directly related to the number of digits in his bank account. If you have the money, you have an in amongst House Steiner and the Lyrans at large, which while yes, that is a general truth in both real life and the great houses, no one exemplifies it quite like the Lyrans. On the level of individual planets, they're largely left to do their own thing. However, the powers that be of any given planet decide they're going to run things is up to them. As long as you follow the general laws of the Lyran Commonwealth, at the end of the day, they won't bother you so long as the taxes are paid and all that good stuff.
That's very simple.
This, of course, leads to the occasional issue of some no-name noble deciding that if he's doing so well on his own, he may as well try to strike out on his own, but that's usually solved when the Lyrans descend upon him like a stampede of elephants until everyone remembers who's really in charge. Overall,
no,
the
haves and the have-nots.
Society where there's not really a major worry about the government coming to dictate exactly how many hours you work, what you're allowed to wear, or anything else like that. In fact, that's a common theme in the Commonwealth across the board. The people in charge are largely content to let those below them do their thing, so long as they retain power at the end of the day.
Basically, reminds me of Game of Thrones. What Cersei said. If I remember correctly, as long as their bellies are full, their crops are good, and the children are healthy, they won't care how the rich and wealthy play the Game of Thrones. I don't know if I got that quote right. Let me know in the comments. But this seems to be exactly what Lyran operates on. Everyone at the top are messing with each other. Anybody tries to rise to the top, will get put down if they're not playing ball. So long as the taxes are being paid, the regular people will be left alone to their own machinations. This is actually a very well-structured civilization, quite honestly. It's very well-structured, although I'm sure there's a lot of hiccups and everything that goes along. But the daily lives seems to be, like the regular people in their daily lives seems to be fine. Until it's not. But then that's all of society, right? But it's very fascinating to see that that the powers that be at the top would not mess with the regular people, in a manner of speaking. So long as they get, they kind of going hand in hand here. They're telling the regular people, the regular worker, as long as you don't do anything stupid and just pay your taxes, we're not gonna mess with you. And I like, and that's very interesting. And they're saying, okay, as long as you don't mess with us, we won't mess with you. We won't uprise against you. That's kind of a weird way to run a society, quite honestly. Because considering that the estate general is the one that makes the laws and runs the taxes, and are trying every which way they can to work the system out, trying to game up on the Archon all the way at the top while dealing with the council sitting in the middle in between them. That's pretty rough, and only as far as a baron can go. So I am very curious what would happen, and I'm hoping it'll be explained, if a regular worker runs a shop and manages to raise it up to the level of to where they could get us very high up. I mean, I know they explained that if if someone goes up, they'll put them down. But I mean, like if they're able to like worm their way in and sneak and like you could be down here the worker and you could still work your way up without saying like you still play their game. You get what I'm saying? Like you could still play their game and still get to the top. I'm very curious if that's the case.
Well, the Arcana and the various nobles in charge can suddenly decide to impose martial law and force you into a labor camp. They never do. They don't create too many wacky laws, they don't have servitors like the Capellans. They're happy to let everyone do their thing while they reap the greatest of the benefits. This relaxed approach means that the population doesn't really feel like they're in a dictatorship. And because the economy founded by 3 nations of businessmen is left to do its thing, it has generated a lot of money for the powers.
Oh, you know what that reminds me of?
The Lyrans to have the single greatest industry in the inner sphere.
It reminds me of the United Arab Emirates.
Every single one of their enemies. While the Free Worlds League might in theory be the capitalist dreamland of your one friend who thinks opening a restaurant is a risk-free venture, it is the Lyrans who ultimately reign supreme in the economic sector. I can't emphasize enough how much money is at the very core of the Lyran Commonwealth. And unlike many other places, this has actually trickled down to the lower rungs of society. The poorest Lyran family could probably afford to own several Federated Sons families as housekeepers. The richest Lyrans are the sort of people to have their own personal garage of battle-ready battle mechs. And yes, I did word that sentence specifically.
That sounds awesome.
Battle-ready battle mechs. The Lyrans may be one step above a dictatorship, but they keep people happy and, more importantly, wealthy enough to not want to change the status quo. Their economy is so goddamn pervasive that for all intents and purposes, they're playing a strategy game with infinite resources. And much like pretty much everyone does in strategy games when you toggle infinite resources on, the Lyran Commonwealth does little more than pump out the biggest, baddest mechs with next to zero regard for how viable they are in the situation they're in. Every war waged against the Lyrans is a war of attrition, and that is the exact kind of war you don't want to be on the opposite side of them in. A well-known joke both in-universe and out is that the Lyrans will create a scouting party out of assault mechs, the largest type you can possibly field. This is barely a joke. Any mech under 50 tons is despised by Lyran officers, and the throne room of the Archon has a pair of 2 fully functional Griffin mechs guarding it. Imagine for a moment, if you will, if the president in the Oval Office had 2 Abrams tanks guarding him. They're not unmanned, there's people in those things. They're ready to fight at a
This is
moment's
so
notice.
epic.
Another joke you might have heard, and one that I've certainly made, is that some people in trigger-happy factions like to replace the atmosphere they're in with bullets. You know, like the orcs over in 40k.
Yay.
The Lyrans do a similar thing, only instead of doing it with bullets, they replace the atmosphere with Atlas mechs. Because to the Lyrans, whose generals are operating on what is essentially a post-scarcity economy, it doesn't matter how many assault mechs they lose. There's always more of the things waiting to be pumped to the front lines. Wars against the Lyran Commonwealth end with 2 outcomes. The enemy is either a red stain on the ground, or the guy in charge of operations on the Lyran end of things decides he's had enough of this nonsense and goes to bother somebody else. Or when he decides he needs more Canopian cat girls for his harem. I'm only joking, of course. I couldn't find anything
I was
about
thinking of
Steiner
Zap
Channels
Brannigan
having
when he
cat
said
girl
that.
harems. The cat girls are all
Not
partaking
this.
in blood sports on Solaris. The average Steiner campaign is just choking the enemy to death on heavy mechs. You can't outproduce them, you can't match their heavy hitters with your own. The best you can hope to do is outmaneuver them until someone important
They operate on
decides that
Brannigan's
Commonwealth
Law.
forces are best spent elsewhere. A Lyran army is an army of walking fortresses, and while this limits their tactical flexibility to the extreme, it also means that once they finally move into range, you can kiss your ass goodbye. It also means that the Lyran's home turf advantage is even greater than that of other factions. When they go on the attack, you can at least get yourself a couple of weeks worth of a breather if you manage to destroy the first 30 Lyran assault mechs before the next wave comes in. When you invade them, they can just walk straight out of their factories onto the battlefield.
The book
sure,
of Brand.
you can find tales of Lyran forces being destroyed because the enemy used
Oh guys, I'm trying to remember the name of it. It's not Brannigan's Law. It's from his Book of War. It's like you send wave after wave of robots. Wave after wave. I can't remember it. Chat, guys, I can't remember it. I know the comments. Somebody in the comments will tell me what Brannigan's Book of War says, because that's exactly what the Steiner family is. They're the freaking Brannigans. this House Brannigan just send wave after wave of soldiers out at the killbots until they could kill no more. They send out wave after wave of robots to kill bots. Oh, guys. Kip, show them my medal.
Use the agility of smaller mechs to run circles around them. But what the victor of these conflicts usually leaves out of the propaganda is that they only won because House Steiner shrugged its shoulders and went to do something else. It doesn't matter that the Lyrans only have one trick up their sleeves, and that trick is just the word economy printed in bold Comic Sans font. It doesn't matter that Lyran generals are almost always outstandingly incompetent because they got to their positions through bribery and nepotism. They don't need to be competent. The average Steiner general has the same budget as God when planning his or her military campaign. In fact, though I'm unsure if this has ever been said officially, I fully believe that the reason Steiner generals have such issues with incompetence is that they have no reason to be competent. I think it's a symptom of the fact that the economy has always been so good in the lands of House Steiner that some idiot being bad at war doesn't matter to them. The people are fed and kept reasonably happy, so who cares
Bread and
if the guy in
circuses.
charge got a few dozen thousand people killed and wasted 30 atlases. 50 more just rolled off the production line, and the Archon promised the next batch of recruits that if they do really well, they might become the next generation
Video
of
footage
nobles.
of
To wrap
Lyran
up what the Lyrans are like, you should know that they're very, very German. Their army's ranks are
Space Germany,
based on German nobility from when Terra was called Earth.
Tanya
They
the
just
evil.
love German culture. Boy, do they love it. Actually, hang on a minute. They're militaristic, as all Battletech factions are. They're known for deploying big, massive vehicles of war, whether or not it's worthwhile to do so. They seem to bounce back alarmingly quickly from massive conflicts. They're German.
Oh no.
I kid. The Lyrans aren't the worst people ever. They're just really into German culture. The way they see it, it was Germany and their descendants who got everyone out of the post-Star League funk.
Yeah, but
so
Steiner's a German name.
Trade, governance, and all that jazz. You might think this would lead to absolutely massive issues with race relations and whatnot, but it actually doesn't. The whole thing about them saying Germans raise everyone out of hell is a very subtle thing that they push. And beyond that, they care about it culturally rather than racially. You can be of any ethnicity humanity has to offer. Come and have some beer and pretzels, fellow Germans. The Lyrans are happy to have you under their iron fist. I would kill to go to a Lyran Oktoberfest. The beer would flow like a river. I'm sure this also means that some Steiners are into some really weird porn, but let's not...
All holding beer steins?
Yeah. Chaos cults don't exist in this universe anyway.
That's why they call themselves Steiners.
It's a freaky hobby of theirs and not demon summoning garbage. Anyways, time to get back to history, because after the Third Secession War,
funny.
Battletech starts getting a bit wacky. Wacky in the sense of the space feudalism gives way to some space eugenicists trying to kill everyone because their great-grandpa had some wacky ideas on how to get everyone to behave. In 2976, one Katrina Steiner was born. She was a sickly child, which made it all the more surprising when at the age of 12 she decided she was going to pilot battle mechs.
What?
She was positioned in a number of odd jobs throughout the Lyran military before coming to command the 10th Lyran Guard, a position which traditionally belonged to the heir of the current Archon. Not really sure why they aren't in charge of the 1st Lyran Guard, since you'd think that'd be more prestigious, but I guess it's because 10 is a bigger number, and in the Lyran Commonwealth, bigger is better. After accidentally being the target of an assassination attempt by the current Archon and fleeing to the periphery to LARP for a bit, she staged a coup and became the Archon.
Wow.
Look at her. This is the face of someone who takes no shit from anyone. Towards the end of the Third Secession War, she proposed something never before seen, a true peaceful end to everything. Naturally, everyone told her to fuck off with those stupid ideas, but Prince Hans Davion of the Federated Sons thought it was something worth considering. Relations between the two biggest great houses began to warm, and in 3022 they signed a deal to get some cooperation between the states in matters of science, economy, and general military matters. It also had a secret provision few knew about, which will come into play soon. And then the year 3028 comes along, and two very important things happened. One, the Fourth Secession War breaks out.
God, how many of these secession wars?
100, it's the largest conflict in terms of scale since the second one. Two, House Steiner and House Davion married that Hans fellow to Katrina's daughter, Melissa Steiner. And with that, the two largest powers in the Inner Sphere merged to become the Federated Commonwealth. And while the Fourth Secession War had very little in terms of territorial losses or gains, in fact, if Sarn is to be...
So, let me get her name one more time.
The largest powers in that Hans fellow to Katrina's daughter, Melissa Steiner.
Melissa.
And with that, the two largest powers in the Inner Sphere merged to become the Federated Commonwealth. And while the Fourth Secession War had very little in terms of territorial losses or gains, in fact, if Sarn is to be believed, it had zero of either, the Lyrans now enjoyed a position of unmatched power, even if they had to share it. Katrina's workings towards peace got her noble house and empire one hell of a reward. True, this era didn't go completely in favor of the Lyrans. If you ever played Mechwarrior 5 and wondered why the hell there was a whole entire new
Federated
country
Commonwealth.
in between the Lyrans and the Caridans, it's because the Lyrans were forced to let an entire section of their border become independent. But all in all, things were looking good for the Lyran Commonwealth. A new title, Archon Prince, was created to be the ruler of the complete combined empire, and things were good. Although in saying that there were no territorial exchanges, Sarna also says that the Lyrans took 53 planets from the Draconis Combine and the Capellans lost a third of their entire holdings to the Federated Sons.
Oh, damn.
So I guess believe in whatever scenario you want to believe in, based on whether or not you like House Kurita. I'd say whether or not you like the Capellans, but come on. Nobody likes the Capellans. Capellans don't like Capellans. And then, year 3050, clans. From the galactic north of the Inner Sphere came hordes of smelly, unwashed barbarians who were unfortunately very good at battle. Not war, pointedly, but battle. And much like everyone else who was unlucky enough to be caught in between the clans and Terra, the Lyrans suffered pretty hefty losses against them. For the first time, it seemed like the Lyran industry wouldn't be enough to hold off the invaders, and the Inner Sphere was gripped by fear as the clanners' relentless assault drove ever closer to Terra. Then the phone company handed them their
They ran out of waves.
Everyone got a pause to breathe for a bit. And out of all people to do it, a competent Steiner general is the one who was in charge. Anastasius Vogt, also known as Frederick Steiner. Look at this man. This is the face of a man who looked the most battle-hardened, bloodthirsty warriors in the galaxy in the eyes and told them where they could shove their honor duels. As it turns out, when House Steiner and the Lyran Commonwealth somehow managed to produce a general who knows actual tactics, there's not a force in existence that can bring them down. Except Clan Wolf, I guess, but 6 out of 7 victories ain't bad. And yes, in a defensive war, a draw is a victory. So 6 out of 10, you pedantic motherfuckers that are about to tell me about the draws the Falcons and the Bears got. A second Star League was formed by the great houses to deal with the clanner threat, and naturally, the Federated Commonwealth had quite a bit of power within it. Now, I'm going to be honest with you, viewer. From everything I've heard most people say about it, once you get past this era of Battletech, things get a lot less fun and a lot more stupid. And not fun medieval houses in space stupid. More so, this is awful writing and you killed half the factions we liked stupid. At least from how I understand it right now, it's like the end times but not quite as shit. And from what I've read of that part of the setting, I tend to agree. Rest in peace, Comstar, speaking of. May you wiretap people for the rest of time in the great corporate dystopia in the sky. As funny as the Blakest Jihad is in a dark way, I don't care to cover much of it. So I'm gonna speedrun the rest of Lyran history right now. Sound good? If you really want to look into it, feel free, but take my word for it that sometimes the majority is right and something really does just kinda suck. A woman named Catherine Steiner Davian decided she would quite like to be in charge, so she removed the entire Lyran half of things from the Federated Commonwealth and renamed it the Lyran Alliance. Bitch. She tried to become the First Lord of the Second Star League, did not succeed, the FedCom civil war between the two halves of the Federated Commonwealth happens, and it ends with them going back to being their own thing again. Then the Second Star League is dissolved because no one cares to have it around anymore.
So wait, Catherine split the Lyrans out of kicked the Lyrans out of the Federated Alliance. Did I hear that? Did I understand that correctly? Catherine Steiner Davant just ended up ending the whole entire Federated Alliance, the Federated Commonwealth, and so the Lyran Commonwealth is back to its original. Well, whatever borders it's got left. I think I may have confused myself there. A
certain part of Comstar decides this is total bullshit, and the Blakest Jihad resets the technological level of Battletech back to the pseudo-Middle Ages after it had been actually recovering soundly for some time. Double bitch. The Lyran Alliance eventually renamed itself to being the Commonwealth again, tries to invade the planets they gave up as a border stake to Razelhag, and it resoundingly backfires. The Arcana is killed before some clanner scum bigwig reveals he's actually the son of that asshole Catherine and plans on becoming the next Archon. The father of this person, very importantly and very grossly, being her brother Victor. I'm tentatively sure it was done with some genetic fuckery rather than regular brother-sister fuckery, but it's still gross. I don't care it also lines up with clanner eugenics and all that stuff about bloodlines being strong. That's nasty. Stop it. But anyways, I'm done with the Lyran history now. I'll end with some tabletop stuff. Since Battletech doesn't have any factions in the way other war games do, if you want to play the Lyrans, you just need to remember that bigger is always better. Always take assault mechs, and when you can't take any more of those, take heavy mechs. Only take a medium mech if you cannot take anything heavier, and if you try to take a light mech, then please see yourself over to the Capellans, you goddamn peasant. The colors of House Steiner are blue and white, with some yellow thrown in every now and then to make it pop. If the returns from the Google image search I used were correct, the colors should be done with the blue being the predominant one, with them taking about 60 to 70% of the model starting on the left side, with the white taking up the remaining parts on the right. Of course, it goes without saying that this obviously isn't a necessity, you goof, and there's a few paint schemes where it's just blue and yellow. I like those ones, in no smaller part because it's the same scheme I use for my Eldar, and I like when two of my favorite factions have something like that in common. But however you choose to paint them, this has been my rather abridged history of the Lyran Commonwealth, wielder of the biggest guns in the Inner Sphere. It's a shame they aren't Comstar, but they're still my second favorite faction. Alright, let me set things straight. You see the Atlas? This thing is the best mech. You might say, well, it's big and ugly and a massive fire magnet. Okay. And? That's the entire fucking point of the thing.
Yeah.
Kerensky himself said to make it as big and ugly as they could possibly make it. This thing is designed with the intention of making you shit your pants.
Yes, that's why it's got a skull.
The intention of being a viable weapons platform. It has an AC-20 lodged into its goddamn chest. You can rip the arms and legs off this thing so it's sitting there like the Black Knight from Monty Python, and it's still a threat. And if there's one thing I hope you take away from this video, it's that the Lyrans have these things in fucking spades. Comstar probably does too, since although they have far better tactics and an actual understanding of utilizing lighter forces, they also control pretty much the entire galactic market, so they can afford it. That's what happens when your version of V-Bucks are the standard everyone else's money is compared to. So yeah, the Atlas is the king of the mechs. The Mackie may be the original, the Highlander may have the Legend of the Black Watch behind it, and Little Irby may be the underdog to end all underdogs, but nothing has the same awe-inspiring presence as the Atlas. This thing will scout you directly to hell.
And It's got tires for testicles. You can't beat that. The Lyrans are really cool. As I was when he showed the orcs, all of a sudden I started thinking the orcs. As I keep hearing more and more about how they just keep sending wave after wave after wave of giant mechs, I'm like, put the orcs in that, and holy, they may not have any concept of money, but the idea that they could just march those giant megs down and just fight over and over again would definitely fit with the Lyrans. They would totally team up with the Lyrans. Because I remember the video that I saw regarding Warhammer saying, how they, what they think of the other factions, and that sometimes they'll team up and everything. Yeah, if they were in this universe, they would totally team up with the Lyrans just from the basis that they can hop on that mech and just go to war. They don't care about dying. It's just the fact that they know they'll fight. The Lyrans are really good. That's actually a really nice system they got going there. Based on ancient Greece, they got democracy. they basically how did I put this? Ancient Greece running on monopoly. There we go. Monopoly is the law. They play the game of Monopoly as the law in Greek context. Of course, they're also Space Germany. And he was this close. I was very scared, but he was this close. Pancreas was this close. He was close. He was close to point out who they really are. But ultimately, it's very interesting that if they had been, that if they were influenced by Germany and German history, they got rid of the bad stuff. Like they took the nasty little fungus in Germany's history and culture and scraped it off, and took the good parts of Germany, the good things of Germany, and brought everybody into the circle, no matter who you are and what you look like, and get and get treated to beer steins by the Steiners. You become Steiners yourself, holding the beer steins up and drinking it all away. The civilization portion is pretty cool. Because I quoted the Game of Thrones, if I quoted it correctly. But yeah, as long as the people are left alone, they don't give a rat's patootie what the hierarchy does, and vice versa. The hierarchy don't care what the people do so long as they don't revolt. So they got a strange bedfellows kind of thing. But I guess when the regular people, do agree to go to war, it's because they like the fact that the people they're with is leaving them alone. They don't want to lose that to some other house where the house will, abuse them and hurt them. Even though it could come off crappy, saying living under Steiner, the fact that Steiner's willing to live and let live is the type of peace this citizenry wants, loves, and with no doubt, regardless of whether, the fact that Steiner's game plan, how Steiner's game plan is just setting wave after wave of robots, effectively killing thousands of citizens. The citizens are willing to say it's worth it if it means that they can continue to live in a system where they're left alone. The powers that be leaves them alone, because the powers that be legitimately does have the ability to willfully say martial law, everyone to the gulags, but they don't do that. They don't do that. And I guess, and my guess is that the citizenry also, has the thinking that House Steiner, like they have the awareness that yes, House Steiner can do that, and they won't, so long as we don't mess with them. If we don't mess with them, they won't do martial law, and they won't do martial law, and they won't mess with us with martial law. You know what I'm saying? So I guess it's I guess one could say it's mutually assured destruction type of thing. I wouldn't say strange bedfellows, more like mutually assured destruction. Because the second they declare martial law, will be the second the citizenry uprises, and if the citizenry uprises, is the second they'll bring in the martial law, and they'll end up squashing each other into oblivion. And since they're aware they got that type of relationship, saying they were able to create that partition and be able to develop, live the society that they're living in. That's pretty crazy. That's actually pretty impressive, but it's pretty crazy. The State General Commonwealth Council are pretty good. Saying so. In terms of dealing with power. Checks. I wouldn't say it's checks and balances. More like I would take. Saying. I guess they keep that. They keep it internal. Saying they play the Game of Thrones and keep it internal. You know what I mean? They keep it internal. They make their maneuvers and everything. No one higher than a baron can get past the estate general. So you got to get higher. And if anybody within that hierarchy, that hierarchical setup tries to make a power move or anything, they could get squashed very easily if they don't have the endorsements, the backup, or anything to make that happen. The Steiners got this good in spades, man. They got it good in spades. Mechs also look nice too. I mean, like I said, this freaking looks epic. Two giant mechs next to a throne as guards. I mean, that's a flex, man. Did I get that right? I'm pretty old. Please don't hurt me. I'm just yelling at the clouds. The Steiner family is pretty impressive. They're very savvy because it's like, they took over they were able to unite with the Federation for a long period of time before Catherine separated. And please let me know if I heard that correctly, that she split that federated Commonwealth alliance, that House Steiner, that the Steiners, the older Steiner, Catherine, Catherine? No, Melissa. Sorry, Melissa. Melissa was the one who married and brought the Federation and the Commonwealth together. And it seems like Catherine, the later generations down the line, split them off. So let me know if I got that correct. I want to make sure I got that one correct. Too many secession wars in this series. It's hilarious. It just kept blowing my mind. Every time I keep hearing it. The mechs are pretty nice too. Blue and white. Of course, they're stockpiled on the atlases. Definitely big thanks to the comments for recommending was that recommended, or did I just stumbled into it? No, that was recommended, right? You know what? I'll just give it to y'all. Thanks to the comment section for having me check out the Atlas. Checking out the Atlas first. I think I did that myself. Well, I'll just give it credit anyway. False credit. I don't know. Mandela effect credit. Mandela effect credit to the comments for suggesting the Atlas, because I understood what he said when he talked about the Atlas. And Pancreas No Work, once again, another good video. Very, very good abridged. Got me to fully see what this whole house is about. Now it's time to check out their mechs. Check out what their mechs are like, and maybe a few extra things before moving on to the next house. So yeah, good job. Head on over to Amazon.com, BarnesandNoble.com, and grab yourself a copy of The Impossible Man, a strange fantasy novel written by me. You'll find links to the book in the description below, along with links to other merch such as pins, stickers, t-shirts, music. Enjoy the products. Thank you for your patronage. And if you happen to have a copy of The Impossible Man and did a lore video on my book, thank you very much. I look forward to hearing your thoughts. And if you're interested, you could join me in my live multi-stream on Twitch and Kick every Monday through Thursday, 10 o'clock p.m. Eastern Standard Time. I do lore research, cultural studies, gaming, and more. Look forward to hanging out with you. So until the next Mechwarrior, Mechwarrior, the next Battletech Mechwarrior research. Thank you all for joining me, and I wish you all a good night. Buenas noches, and hoy subí the site.